Solve the system graphically. Estimate values to the nearest thousandth. We have the two equations, negative pi x plus the square root of 3y equals 3.3, and the square root of 5x plus the quantity 1 plus the square root of 2 times y equals 2.1. So to solve these graphically on the calculator, we need to solve the equation for y. In this case, then, we need to add pi x to each side. The result is the square root of 3y equals pi x plus 3.3. And now we need to divide each side by the square root of 3 so that we get y equals pi x plus 3.3. I'm going to put that in parentheses and then put the diagonal slash with the square root of 3 because this is the way we'll have to enter it into the calculator. For the second equation, we need to isolate y, and that means we start by subtracting the square root of 5 times x from each side. So what that gives us is 1 plus the square root of 2 in parentheses times y, and that's equal to 2.1 minus the square root of 5 times x. Now again, we've got to divide by this coefficient on both sides. When I write out this equation, I'm going to put this expression in parentheses, 2.1 minus the square root of 5 times x, in parentheses, the diagonal slash, since that's what we'll have on the calculator, and then in parentheses, 1 plus the square root of 2. So now let's go to the calculator and enter each of those equations into the calculator and then find where they intersect. So on the calculator, we'll hit the equation editor, or the y equals key. For y sub 1, we enter a parenthesis, and then for pi, we hit second, and then the raise the button, or exponent button, which has a little blue pi above it. And then we need the x key, then the plus, and then we enter 3.3. Close those parentheses, and then we divide by, so there's our slash, and now we need the square root of 3, so we hit second, and then the square root key, which is x squared, and you'll see it gives us a parenthesis. We'll enter 3, and we'll close the parentheses. That's our first equation. For equation number 2, we hit the down arrow key, which brings us to y sub 2. Here we enter in parenthesis, and now we have negative the square root of 5, so we hit second, x squared. It gives us a parenthesis. We enter 5. We close the parenthesis, so we have negative the square root of 5. That gets multiplied by the x key, and then we add, so plus key, 2.1. And now we close the parenthesis. We hit the division symbol, which gives us the slash, and now we need to open the parenthesis, enter the numbers 1, and then plus key, the square root of 2, so we have to go second and the square root key. We enter inside there 2, close the parenthesis, which is just the parenthesis for the square root, so we now need to hit the parenthesis key again. So those are our two equations. Let's set the window, so we hit the window key, and we want that to be negative 5, so hit negative the 5 and enter. We want this to be positive 5, hit the enter. The scale we want to be 1. We want the same numbers for the y values, so negative 5 is already there. So then we hit enter, and now enter 5 and hit the enter key, press 1 and hit the enter key. So we now have the correct window. So now let's hit the graph key, and we'll get a graph of our two lines, as you can see them being drawn. And now we want to find the intersection. To find the intersection, what we do is hit the second key and then the calculate key, which says trace in white and calc in blue. And then we hit the number 5, which is the intersect. what it's going to ask us is what's the first curve, and it's giving us y sub 1, and that's the correct one, so we hit enter. It asks us for the second curve, and that's y sub 2, and that's what it's giving us, so we hit enter. Now it wants us to locate approximately where the intersection is. Right now it's saying the word guess question mark x equals 0. Well, we can see that it's actually to the left of x equals 0. So if we hit the left arrow key, it moves closer to the intersection. It doesn't matter exactly where you are, but I've moved it over a little. Let's hit enter, and now it will calculate the intersection. And the intersection is x equals negative 0.3778847, y equals 1.2198489. What we'll do is, of course, approximate those to the thousandth, and so we'll round those off and we'll write them on the board. So now that we have the point of intersection, let's write that on the board. That would be the point negative 0.378, comma 1.220.